Within an hour after dropping off your kids at your ex-wife's house, a passerby finds you dead in the road not far away. The murder seems random, and police are baffled. That is, until a strange piece of evidence leads investigators to an unlikely suspect. My name is M. William Phelps. I'm an investigative journalist and the true crime author of close to 50 books. I've dedicated the past 25 years of my life to helping families of the missing and murdered. Join me. We're crossing the line. Jacksonville Beach, Florida is marketed as a resort community along the Atlantic coastline, housing about 24,000 residents with views of the Atlantic Ocean as the sun rises, stopping you in your tracks. Located in northern Florida, Jacksonville is one of those places in the Sunshine State within the crime world we don't hear much about. Of course, Florida itself, for any of my longtime listeners, is one of a few states in the country where murder appears to be at epidemic levels, which is quite untrue, actually. As much as I myself often take jabs at the state, in fact, Florida is not even in the top 5 states with the highest murder rates. Mississippi being number 1 as of 2023's latest census. Louisiana next, Alabama, New Mexico, and Tennessee rounding out those top spots. Those states with the lowest murder rates during the same period: New Hampshire, Utah, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Idaho. Data can always be tricky, and a list like this doesn't take into account population size. It's hard to compare Rhode Island, say, to Utah or Florida. But still, Florida is not the magnet for murder we think it is. Though I will say, high-profile and brutal murder seems to dominate Florida headlines. Jacksonville Beach is a gorgeous area with amusement parks, piers, boardwalks, high-end hotels, pristine, multi-million-dollar beachfront properties, along with a host of other things to do when enjoying what can be ideal weather conditions at certain times of the year. I guess my point here is that when certain types of homicide happen in a city such as Jacksonville, we take notice. The cases get covered more than they might in other states and big cities. On Wednesday, February 16th, 2022, just before 8 p.m., the Jacksonville Beach PD receive an odd call. On Sanctuary Boulevard, which is quite a walk inland from the beach areas, just off the 202, not far from one of those man-made Florida ponds they often call lakes, a man has been reported as lying dead in the road. According to early reports, he has been shot several times. When first responders and police officers arrive and take one look at him, they confirm he is dead, and that his murder, they noticed almost immediately, appears to be an execution. The area where the man has been found is kind of a quiet, dark, residential neighborhood. So it's not as though this is some sort of random murder motivated by a carjacking or robbery, which is an increasingly more common crime than not in Florida. The man is quickly identified as Jared Bridegan, a 33-year-old father of 4, including twins. He has 2 children with an ex-wife and 2 with his current wife. Jared works for Microsoft and lives in St. Augustine, a straight drive south along the coastline about 30 miles away. He was born in Missouri, raised in Jacksonville. He attended the Douglas Anderson School of Arts and Utah Valley University, where he earned his bachelor's in digital media. Jared is one of those happy-go-lucky guys, always smiling, always in a good mood, always willing to help someone. One of his passions is cinema. His family would soon say that his highest purpose in life, however, is his role as a husband to his second wife, Kristen, and as a father to his 4 kids. In a Facebook post just before his death, Jared spoke of his faith, mostly, saying his priorities in life were, first and foremost, his relationship with his Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ. Second only to the relationship he has with what he called his eternal companion, best friend and wife, Kristen. Third was the privilege, as he termed it, of being the father to his children. He also believed without a doubt that one day he would, quote, kneel before the Savior to give an accounting of his life on earth. And this belief framed his life choices. You hear all that, and your first thought has to be, who would want this guy dead? One of Jared's favorite hobbies is home improvement, especially when working alongside Kristen. Together, they had handcrafted wooden beams for the ceiling inside their home, built a custom fireplace and office, along with other projects they had done around the home together. Jared was also the guy in the neighborhood who would loan you his tools and then show up to help you out. He had recently taken on a role as a Sunday school teacher to 11 and 12-year-old youths who have nothing but high praise for him. I could go on and on here with testimonials about Jared and how loved he was and how much he loved people and changed lives. You get the picture. The guy was a gem, one of those people who did not seemingly have an enemy in the world. Yet, as investigators arrive at the scene and begin to try to figure out what happened, when, exactly where Jared was murdered, and who could have committed such a bold act, right there in the middle of a suburban neighborhood, it becomes clear that there was someone out in the world who had an issue with Jared and hated this man enough to want him dead. And that is the part of the mystery within many murder cases. You just never know. You never can tell if there is someone out in the world plotting, planning, and taking steps to put in place a detailed conspiracy to take your life. A guy like Jared would have, like most, lived his day-to-day life under the assumption that he was not in the crosshairs of someone out to have him killed. The Jacksonville Beach Police Homicide and Death Investigations Unit finds out that Jared had, just previously to being shot and killed, in those moments before his body was discovered, dropped off his twins at his ex-wife, Shanna Gardner's house, which is right around the corner from where he was killed. To everyone's horror at the scene, they discover that Jared's 2-year-old daughter with his current wife is still inside the vehicle Jared was driving in her car seat. This, as her father's body is found on the road just beyond the window closest to her. And the child is screaming. One investigator, standing, looking around, notices that there are really no businesses in the area where the murder took place. Just around the corner from where it happened, there are lights and small office spaces and homes. It's a much busier area. So Jared's killer waited for the right opportunity where he would more likely not be seen or caught on CCTV. Checking the inside of Jared's car, they noticed that he had stopped for some reason and put his hazard lights on. So his killer could have flagged him down, or Jared had stopped for some other reason. Either way, as soon as he stepped out of the car, Jared's killer came out of the shadows and gunned him down. They speak to Kristen, Jared's wife, and break the news. And of course, she is beyond crushed, beyond upset and shocked, beyond confused. All that comes with receiving the worst news you can get without warning. 1 minute you are washing dishes, vacuuming, watching TV, maybe working on your laptop, doing whatever it is you do. The next minute, there's a knock at your door and your entire life is shattered. Just doesn't seem fair. I just spoke to him, Kristen says. There was nothing unusual about the conversation. She explains that Jared was driving back home after a nice night out with the kids when they spoke. Looking more deeply into the crime scene, Jared's watch, wedding ring, phone, cash, and wallet were not taken. Nobody stole his car. His daughter was not hurt physically. All of this seems odd, but at the same time makes it quite obvious that Jared's killer had maybe sought him out. Even scarier, as they conduct ballistics inside the car searching for projectiles, they discover that several bullets had passed within feet of the child in the back seat. The little girl is lucky to be alive. The child was crying when I got here, one witness tells investigators. So the scene was chaotic when it happened. No doubt about it. And the child witnessed it all. Where do you begin? How do you develop leads and suspects in such a case? If you listen to Crossing the Line with Emily and Phelps on a regular basis, I expect you to know the answer to this week's quiz question. Do you begin with a potential motive and work backwards? Ring camera footage is your go-to. You all knew that. I know you did. And any other video you can get from surrounding businesses and homes. You want to take a look at the type of traffic coming and going near the time of the murder and see if you can get an image of Jared's vehicle heading down that road. It's fairly obvious, but then maybe it's not, that Jared's killer did not randomly approach him on foot. There's no doubt the killer followed Jared or was waiting somewhere for him and knew his schedule, stalking him. The one thing an investigation like this takes is time and patience. Collecting all that data and video involves applying for warrants and getting judges to sign off. By March, investigators collect all the video they possibly can from the general area and begin to drill down into it, searching for any anomaly they can dredge up. They then go to the media and release a bit of carefully selected information. They come out and say they are looking for a blue Ford F-150 pickup, which was caught on video in the area near the time frame of the murder. Is this person a suspect? Maybe. Someone with information perhaps about the murder, or maybe somebody who saw something important? Hopefully. Now, if you are a Dateline fan, the trope every other week on that tired old beast of a show is husband kills wife, wife kills husband. So, as an investigator, you'd be negligent if you didn't look into the possibility that Jared's wife or his ex-wife could have played a potential role in what is clearly an execution-style murder. Let's get into that thread of the case when we return from our first break. Be right back with more Crossing the Line with Emily and Phelps in 1 minute. And thank you for listening. Please subscribe to the show so you don't miss an episode. And leave a review on Apple Podcasts if you can. Those can help boost visibility. Don't forget, I release new episodes every Wednesday night at midnight. A new case each week. Be right back. Jared's first wife, Shanna Gardner, had remarried and was now Shanna Gardner-Fernandez. And as rumors fly around town and on the old toxic internet social media environment, and people start to point a finger at the ex-wife, Shanna goes on the defensive and sits with the local news, denying having anything to do with Jared's death. She says yes, their divorce was acrimonious, but in no way would it have been a motive for killing the father of two of her children. I mean, if every husband or wife involved in an acrimonious divorce killed their spouse, well, there would be hundreds of thousands of murders every year. You cannot just jump to, she did it because they fought during a divorce. You need a hell of a lot more. But you would have to take a look nonetheless and see if there's any evidence linking her to the murder. It should be easy to rule the ex-wife in or out. Studying the video footage more and more as time moves on, investigators make an important discovery. In those moments just before Jared drives down the road where he was killed, several vehicles had made the trip down the same road and driven straight by the location where Jared's car was located without stopping. Normal traffic, in other words. But when they take a closer look at the footage, they see a vehicle believed to be Jared's swerve at some point in the road in order to avoid hitting something. So there was an obstruction of some sort in the road. Digging further, they discover that obstruction was a large tire from a 2004 Ford F-150 Lariat truck. The theory this suggests is someone had placed that tire in the road just before Jared arrived, so he would have to stop. And when he stopped, he'd have to then get out of the vehicle to move the tire, which would give a gunman the opportunity to kill him. So the search begins to find that truck. As word spreads about the truck, investigators develop the name of a potential man driving such a vehicle. He's 61 years old, big dude, 6'3", 260 pounds, with a criminal record in both Georgia and Florida, including driving with a suspended license, burglary, grand theft, and, lo and behold, possession of firearms. If you're an investigator involved in a case like this and you come across that sort of information, you go home that night feeling like it's been a productive day. You are getting somewhere. Then they check out known vehicles this same guy owned, and he is currently listed as having the same exact truck they are looking for, a blue Ford F-150. Your productive day just keeps on getting better. Seems like he'd be the one to question about the murder, but then again, a known repeat offender, a thief no less, who did not take any of Jared's possessions, doesn't fit. It doesn't make sense. So they arrest the guy, Henry Tennant, on an unrelated charge of driving without a license. They bring him in, set him up in an interview suite with the notion that they will, at some point during the interview, take a poke at him for Jared's murder and see how he responds. Still, what they haven't found as of yet is a link between Henry Tennant and Jared. There would have to be a link, that is, if robbery is off the table. The two would have to be connected in some possible way. Otherwise, why would Henry Tennant kill Jared? Sure, he could just be batshit crazy and just decided to kill someone. But they quickly find out he's not crazy. We often hear you don't have to prove motive in a court of law, and that is definitely true. But motive, as an investigator, is one of your driving factors in solving a case. You find motive, generally speaking, the identity of your killer is standing right there beside it. Just as they begin questioning Tenen, the investigation turns up an interesting piece of new evidence. Tenen lives in a home he rents on Potomac Avenue in Jacksonville, not too far from where Jared was murdered. And the owner of that home, one investigator explains to the others, is Fernandez-Saldana. Who is that? Saldana is the current husband of Shanna Gardner, Jared's ex-wife. This is the point in the investigation when they might all look at each other and smile. That link they were searching for, there it is. So now you can connect Jared to Henry Tenen. But then, how is it that Henry Tenen fits into it all? He doesn't seem like the sharpest tool in the shed, to say the least, and he seems rather quite incapable of coming up with a plot in what seems to be the carefully planned murder of a Sunday school teacher and Microsoft exec. And because of that, more likely than not, investigators realize it is going to be easy to crack Tenen and get the truth out of him. It always is in these situations. Because here is the bottom line none of these knuckleheads think about all that much while planning and plotting a homicide of this nature. Conspiracies to commit murder never work. I do not understand why people believe that what has historically never worked as a murder plan will, in their case, somehow be pulled off without anyone talking or evidence being developed connecting everyone. I am sure it has to do with hubris and the narcissism sociopaths harbor, and that they believe they are smarter than everyone else. But you have to be pretty damn stupid to think that a guy like Henry Tenen, if you involve him in a conspiracy to commit murder, will become your rock and not crack at the first sign of dangling a death sentence or life in prison in front of his face. But here we are. A sucker is born every day, they say. Look, I have this swampland in Florida I'll sell you cheap, which you can then turn around in a year and sell for twice the purchase price. Yeah, that's the ticket. The question is, how deep does the conspiracy go? Does it stop at Fernandez-Saldana, Shanna's husband, or run down into others being involved? Because you cannot just assume that Shanna is involved. The husband could have had a beef with Jared, hired Tenen, and Shanna knew nothing about it. He could have heard Shanna complaining about Jared and something he was doing, and so he decides on his own to then have the guy killed. There are many different scenarios which can fit into a matrix where Shanna Gardner is completely out of the loop. But then there's also the possibility that she is the one behind it all, the driving factor. The good news for investigators is the more people involved, the better the chances are at seeing the dominoes fall on top of one another. In these cases, usually, the one who speaks first gets the best deal. I wrote a book once about a conspiracy to kill a man, in which 5 people were involved. The one who got the least amount of time in prison was the actual shooter, the guy who carried out the murder. The one who faced the death penalty was the woman who came up with the plan and put it into action. So it's a give and take when you're trying to crack a conspiracy. You want the main source, the person who sanctioned the murder and came up with the idea to want that person dead, because without them, there is no murder. Henry Tenen did not know Jared, had never met him, and had no reason to want to kill him, other than, that is, a payday or, as I have seen in certain cases, extortion. I'll be right back after one final short break. You are listening to Crossing the Line with M. William Phelps. There's a photo of Jared and his daughter, the 2-year-old, taken not long before his murder, and the little girl has her small hand on her father's chin. Both are grinning ear to ear and look to be as happy as anyone could possibly ever be. It's an incredibly moving image, considering that this girl would sit in her car seat and watch a man murder her father. Turns out that Jared had dropped off his and Shanna's children at his ex-wife Shanna's house, backed out of the driveway, turned onto what was a very dimly lit road, and as he drove, Jared saw that tire in front of him in the road and he stopped. He could have swerved around it and kept going. But Jared, being the man he was, he pulled over to move it so no one else would hit it, which was when Henry Tennant stepped out of the darkness and ambushed Jared, gunning down a man he did not know in the middle of the street and nearly killing the 2-year-old child in the back seat as well. By January 2023, Jacksonville Beach investigators working diligently arrest Henry Tennant, Mr. Fernandez-Saldana, and Shanna Gardner for Jared's murder. Tennant pleads not guilty. I told you he was not the sharpest tool in the shed. But then, rethinking his position, a month later, Tennant has second thoughts and decides to plead guilty. Henry Tennant was promised $150,000 for the murder, as if they were ever going to pay him that amount of money. Tennant rented that house from Shanna's husband, so that is how they ensnared him into becoming their pawn. How they thought for 1 minute that police would not make this connection between Tennant, where he lived, who owned the property, and Jared is beyond what the word stupidity can explain. So I won't even try to. The husband and wife murder team plead not guilty. Another move made by 2 idiots. Shanna faces capital felony murder charges. And we all know what that means in the state of Florida. They had arrested Shanna in Washington State after she took off when things became heated in Jacksonville, and she felt a blow from the iron fist of justice coming. She fought to stay in Washington, but lost that legal battle pretty quickly. And you're going to love this. Shanna then hired none other than attorney Jose Baez, whom you might recall as representing Aaron Hernandez, a former New England Patriots star player who committed murder and then killed himself. And of course, Baez's most high-profile client, Casey Anthony. In what has become part of the murderer's playbook in recent years, something I have talked about on Crossing the Line in the past, Shanna Gardner then hired a public relations firm. I think we need to take a look at this trend of high-profile accused murderers using PR firms to place a narrative of their choosing, which mostly involves made-up bullshit, out into the world, especially on social media, tainting jury pools, exacerbating and fueling conspiracy theories. A PR firm? Really? You've been accused of a capital felony. You hire a PR firm. Investigators wiretapped Gardner's phone and learned that Shanna's family runs a multi-million-dollar business in Utah, where she's from. The PR firm in Utah she hired then has several conversations with her. During many of those recorded conversations, investigators discover incriminating evidence of a conspiracy. For one, the PR consultant suggested to Shanna at one point that she devise a story about a gay lover who had actually committed the murder. In another, the consultant suggested Shanna, out on bail, take a vacation and check into a hotel under a fake name. Investigators then publicly state they have a witness who will say that Jared told them that Shanna had threatened to hire a hitman to have him killed as far back as 2017. Shanna apparently was upset over how they were raising the kids and an imminent child custody case they had been engaged in. These spousal murders, it's always the child custody cases. It's mind-blowing that these people do not consider that all of this will eventually come out. Investigators then develop another witness, a good friend of Shanna Gardner's, who claims she heard Fernandez-Saldana say, "You know I've killed people before," and also that Shanna had once told her husband offered to get 4 guys and break into Jared Bridegan's residence in the middle of the night and take care of him and nobody would ever know. Yeah, 4 guys and Fernandez would commit the murder and nobody would ever know. He's not just a photo on the nightly news, Jared's wife comes out and says. I want people to know that he was a great dad and a great spouse. As it stands now, Shanna and her husband are awaiting trial for Jared's murder. Expect to see this high-profile case on Court TV, I imagine. That is, if it makes it to trial. And also, expect to see guilty verdicts if it does. The evidence is overwhelming. I mean, look, I am all for the presumption of innocence. We all are. But here in this case, I don't see how one can explain away the idea that Henry Tennant, who will testify how he had practiced the route Jared had taken on several occasions and that cell phone records will back that up, Tennant had no reason to kill Jared, with the exception of a promised $150,000 payday from the husband of Jared's ex-wife. Sitting in a jury box, hearing that, it's all you need. That's it for this week. Be safe, be aware. Sources for this episode include: court agrees to block some evidence from being released before Shanna Gardner's trial, Francine Frazier and Ariel Schiller, News 4, JAX, September 16th, 2025. State's Attorney's Office releases new evidence in local father Jared Bridegan's murder-for-hire case by Finn Carlin, Action News, JAX, September 10th, 2025. And, most importantly, Henry Tennant's arrest warrant. Crossing the Line is executive produced by M. William Phelps, LLC, and Matthew Valentinus, Mom's Basement Management. Written by me, M. William Phelps. Audio mastering and mixing by Matt Russell. Music by Epidemic Sound. Original music written and performed by Thomas Mooney, Tom Phelps, and Matt Russell.